The hell is the count of this place?
I don't know. All right. Do we have anybody here to introduce 1132? Seeing none, we're going to open the hearing on 1132, and I'll ask Senator Lang to introduce.
Mr. Chair, I'll introduce House Bill 1132, prohibiting the display of certain flags and banners in public schools and public charter schools and establishing penalties for the display of prohibited flags and banners.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Selig? Sorry. Selig, all right.
Thank you, Senator Pearl and committee, and I
Morning,
look forward to
welcome.
spending the morning with you as I'll be introducing another bill later. So I am here in opposition to House Bill 1132, which prohibits the display of certain flags and banners in our public schools, charter schools, and establishes penalties for those violations. Under the proposal, the schools might display only a very narrow list of approved flags or banners, essentially the US flag, the New Hampshire flag, and a few limited exceptions. Any other flags would be banned, subject to complaint, removal, and escalating penalties, including disciplinary action and fines up to $1,000 per offense. It might be framed as good school policy, but please make no mistake, it's a government mandate regulating symbolic speech. Flags are forms of expression. They convey values, identity, history, and community. For many students and families, flags represent heritage, pride, remembrance, and belonging. When the legislature dictates which symbols are permitted and which are forbidden, it is authorizing state censorship based on content, which runs directly counter to the fundamental free speech principles and the spirit of the First Amendment. The First Amendment does not say free speech is protected only when the government approves of a message. It says government shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, and this bill places school officials in the position of policing expression under threat of penalties, determining which viewpoints may be displayed in public school spaces. That is not neutrality, it's government control over expression. Putting aside the First Amendment, the bill also has excessive overreach. Will kindergartners no longer be able to have birthday banners? Will fifth graders in the Gridiron Challenge no longer be able to fly Patriots flags? Will the high school dance team be banned from their St. Patrick's Day banner during their Kaylee? Will senior photo banners be banned from graduation ceremonies? Then too, the enforcement structure turns educators and administrators into speech monitors. It creates a climate where students and staff might hesitate to express identity or values for fear of violating state policy. The chilling effect is especially troubling in schools where students should be learning how to engage with differing perspectives, not how to avoid them. New Hampshire's motto, "Live Free or Die," reflects our deep commitment to liberty. Suppressing symbolic expression, even in schools, undermines that tradition and erodes trust in our institutions. The answer to controversial symbols is not prohibition, it's dialogue and education. Let's let students learn to debate, to understand history, and engage respectfully with differing views. And so for this reason, I urge you to vote no on 1132.
Thank you, Representative, for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Senator Lang.
Do you think it should be an unrestricted access? They can put anything they want up?
I don't believe they should be able to put anything. There are certain things that we have labeled as hate speech, for example. So I don't think it would be appropriate to put hate speech flags up. I think if a class is learning specifically about the Civil War, for example, and so in the classroom, there's the Confederate flag is hung and the Union flag is hung because they're being there for the purposes of educating people on what these two flags are during that lesson, that's appropriate. Do I like the Confederate flag personally? No, but that's my personal belief. I don't believe that we should be saying schools can't display that for educational reasons. Do I want swastikas hung in schools? No, but again, if they're doing a unit on World War II, it's important that they recognize what a swastika is and how it was used and perhaps understand its origin. So I think there's a difference between common sense about this and prohibiting all flags.
Paula? Sure.
So, but again, absent curriculum-related issues, flags, do you think there should be a limit on what's allowed to be displayed in the classroom?
I think schools and individual school districts have the right to say that they are willing to have certain flags and not others, but those should be local, specifically local decisions based on the local community's wishes.
One will follow.
But isn't that local community, whether it's the school board or anything else, the state deciding what's going to be displayed? So what's the difference between the legislature doing it and the local governance board doing it, which is also a political subdivision? Why is it okay for them and not the legislature?
So the school board is nonpartisan. The state legislature is not.
Sure.
Thank you. Senator Altshuler. Can you reach it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Representative Selig, for taking my question. I think you started to talk about this, about whether local communities and their locally elected school boards and administrators hired by said school boards should be the ones to make decisions about what's appropriate for their communities. And if the community, is your suggestion, if the community objects to something, then the community should have the control over whether or not something should go up or not go up?
Yes, I believe it should be done at the local community level, that each school district should be able to make the determination, just like they should be able to choose the appropriate curriculum for their school district, right? It may be that for my school district, phonics-based reading makes the most sense. But it might be that in your school district, whole language reading makes the most sense. And the cost of those programs might be different and it might make more sense. Or maybe your district is a district that has multiple curriculum available. Those are decisions that should be made at the community level, not at the state level. We shouldn't be dictating what those policies should be and adding penalties, huge penalties for this kind of thing, which, you know, what's going to happen if a kid comes to school wearing a flag that's not listed on this? Is that going to put them subject to a penalty if they don't send the kid home or tell the kid to change their clothes? How is that going to work? If someone has a flag on their, you know, in the parking lot, we see people driving around with flags all the time these days attached to their vehicles. If one of those pulls into the parking lot, is the school district then going to be subject to a $1,000 penalty? How's it going to work?
Thank you.
Question. Yeah, I'm going to ask one first. I think there's some clarity starting on line 3 as to the situations that you were just discussing about. That wouldn't, I don't think someone coming in personally with a flag on their car would be a public school or a public charter school displaying that flag. I think that is relatively clear. I mean, would you agree?
I would not agree. What if it's the school principal with the truck with the flag, or the superintendent, or what if it's the head of the PTO? You know, where does the line end between, if it's on school grounds, it's on school grounds. If we're at a sporting event and you have a group of parents who unfurl a banner that, you know, one member of the community objects to and says doesn't meet these things, are we then going to have a situation of subjecting the school to a $1,000 fine? And if it's, you know, what if 10 parents are holding flags that someone says doesn't meet these standards? Does the school then pay $10,000?
Senator Lang, with a question?
Again, I was going around the same discussion. I think this is about the government, the public school, right? That is a government agency. It's a political subdivision of the state established by the legislature. It's a government agency. And what this says is public schools and public charter schools, both created by the legislature, shall not display. So I think it was pretty clear that an individual wearing a shirt with a flag on it isn't the public school where it doing that. It says it's the individual doing that. But again, so I wanted to ask a question. You talked about a little bit about free speech and the ability for free speech. Do you think teachers have unlimited free speech in the classroom?
Again, I think that's an issue of local control and the way teachers, the way that school districts make decisions about how teachers, what teachers should say or shouldn't say. I think that we need to be very careful about what we're regulating, because I think, you know, do I think the teachers should get up in a classroom and say only people who like blue are good people and only people who like red are bad people? No, but teachers don't typically do that. You know, I'm not saying that there hasn't been a teacher who's ever done something like that, but that's not typical teacher behavior. And there's always appropriate channels for addressing that situation if a parent complains about a teacher. So that's a different issue. That's not relevant to this bill.
One more follow-up.
Thank you. But again, you just said that flags are a form of speech and indication and protest, right? And now you're saying
They
that.
could, I did not say they were a form of protest. They certainly have been used at protests.
Okay. So again, my question is, we know that Supreme Court's ruled that the First Amendment privilege is not absolute for a teacher. So it has been ruled in courts and otherwise that they don't have an absolute right, especially when speaking in their official capacity. And again, if flags are a form of speech, they could be regulated. So do you disagree with that assessment of the Supreme Court? That there's a certain amount of rights that are restricted from people acting in their official duty as a teacher?
I believe that teachers' responsibility is to educate children to be curious, to ask deep questions, and do deep thinking about issues. I think that that's the primary focus of teaching.
Thank you.
Senator Gannon keeps raising his hand.
Senator Gannon?
Sorry, he's in the corner there.
So I think you alluded to this earlier, that content-based restrictions always fail, right?
Sorry?
It's a basic rule of thumb in law is content-based restrictions always fail?
I did not say that.
No, okay, I thought you were, but that is, just so you know, that is a rule
Right.
that the courts have held, the Supreme Court has held, content-based. So how can I let the localities restrict content? You were saying let them decide locally, then they're making a content-based restriction.
I don't understand your question.
I'll hold and I'll just listen. Never mind. Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
I'm going to struggle with this name. Can you help me here?
Deborah, I
Do you think it's Deborah?
That's what I think.
AFT. Deb
All right.
House.
Deb Howes. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Good morning. Oh, wait.
Good morning, Walt.
It's okay. Once a teacher, always a teacher. I was just waiting for,
Yes, I'm sorry.
I didn't want to interrupt your conversation. Good morning. My name is Deborah Howes. I'm president of the American Federation of Teachers, New Hampshire. And I am here to speak against this proposed legislation. We feel that this legislation has the potential to interfere with school staff's ability to create a warm and welcoming school community within all of our public schools. Schools are more than instructional spaces, they are communities. Flags are visual symbols that show students they belong and that they are safe and respected. Taking this discretion away of what you can hang in your schools, whether it is directly tied to a particular lesson being taught that day or part of the atmosphere of the school, sends a message that some students and families do not count. I'm going to tell you a little story about the school that I taught at for 18 years. Every year in the spring, we would have a celebration of learning. And that was something to engage our school families, to invite them into a dinner. And we would have projects that students worked on at the different grade levels, and we would present those projects in the gym so students could bring their families in to see things they have worked hard on. Many of our upper elementary schools would work on projects about immigration, which is like a 4th and 5th grade social studies project, where people had come from, back to the Pilgrims, back to immigration from Europe over the 18th century. Some of our families in Nashua were more recent immigrants. We also have many language arts projects where students read folk tales from different lands, or they read about family traditions. And we would always have a dinner that was a potluck dinner, and families would bring in foods. And many of those foods were from their different traditions, because traditions are important, not just in things we read about, but to families. And we would decorate our school with flags from all the different places that our families were from. And it became part of our school that those flags would remain up, showing that all of our families, wherever they were from, whether they came recently or long ago, belong as part of our school community. And all of our students belong as part of our school community. So that's not necessarily a particular lesson we were teaching that day, but it showed that they all belonged. So that was that's a particular reason in one particular school, but we are not unique in New Hampshire. We all have families that came from somewhere, whether it's recently or long ago, and our heritage is important to us. And creating that sense of belonging for every single student is important. It unnecessarily limits the educational use of flags and banners and symbols when they're only part of a narrowly defined lesson. The bill is yet another state intrusion on local decision-making about schools. Our local school board actually was okay with this use and encouraged things that encouraged family engagement. Didn't want to use the same verb twice, sorry. I'm off the cuff here. So they wanted active family engagement. So this sort of activity was well supported by our local school board. And it also invites arbitrary enforcement because it's based on complaints. So if someone doesn't like a flag, you might get a complaint. Whereas somewhere else, you won't. And we know when there's arbitrary enforcement, that invites lawsuits. So do you really want to pass another law that is putting state control over local decision-making of school boards that's going to get arbitrarily enforced? We really have been down this road before, and we really shouldn't go there again. Let's trust our local school boards to make the right decisions on policies for their schools, and let our schools create communities where all students can feel they belong, and get back to focusing on what's important, which is helping our students learn and thrive, because that's what is important in our schools. And I don't know how many others you have signed up. Okay, because I'd really like to limit questions so I can get over to the other education committee.
You have time for questions?
Okay.
Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. House, for taking my question.
Yep.
We usually see each other in 2 other committees, so welcome to ED&A.
Yes.
It's an unusual situation to have you here. So I'm looking at the bill in line 13, and you brought this up in your testimony, that any violation of this section shall result in a formal complaint.
Yes.
So that this is complaint driven. And from the reading of this bill, it sounds like anybody can make a complaint, not someone who works in the school, not a family that belongs to the school, just anybody. They can see a social media post of somebody who has posted something about their child's classroom, or a school has made a post advertising a festival that they have coming up at their school, and somebody who is unrelated to this school community altogether can then go forward and make a complaint and begin what we have seen already in New Hampshire as outside forces coming in to harass local school communities over their very intense local decisions. Is this opening another avenue for that kind of harassment to continue?
It certainly is. I mean, you don't have to have a student saying, I feel uncomfortable when I see that symbol. You don't have to have a parent saying, my student came home and said they felt uncomfortable. It could be someone who saw it, like you said, in a flyer advertising an event at the school, or in the background of somebody's social media post, or heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend. Sorry, that's a song cue, but I'm not going to sing. You don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
It's no messing,
But-
So Aria,
Yeah.
no messing around in my committee.
Yeah, it's a little early in the morning. But it could lead to that, which is, again, why, complaint-driven processes
Yeah.
lead to uneven enforcement and, frankly, lead to challenges in the courts.
Paula?
yeah. Final follow-up. Unfortunately, none of the sponsors of this bill came to support their own legislation or explain to the committee why they felt that this was necessary. But is it your experience, since you represent teachers, that when there is an issue within a school community, that kind of complaint issue problem is addressed first with teachers, and then it loops into administration before it goes up to a school board? I mean, there are processes with which many issues that families have, there is a way to address objections to anything, whether it be
The normal
school
thing would,
decorations or curriculum.
sorry.
Yeah, no
Yes,
worries.
the normal procedure would be to have a conversation or an email or, you know, a text, whatever way you are communicating with the teacher. And if that is unsatisfactory, it's up the chain of command. It's to the, you know, the principal, and then, you know, going further to up administration if you are not getting a response that resolves things. There are ways to resolve these locally if you have a concern. This, you know, goes straight to saying everyone must do one set thing across the whole state. And it disregards what is good educational practice, which is creating safe and welcoming communities for our students and their families. Because family engagement is part of keeping students successful in school.
Thank you. Now, I'll remind the committee members, we have many bills that
Yep.
the reps and senators aren't able to attend. So let's kind of not disparage them for that. This current makeup we have of not being able to be in one location has made it hard on all of us. So I'll just remind everyone of that. Further questions, Senator Lang?
I just have one question. Do you agree that the First Amendment privileges of a teacher can be restricted within the school?
Well, I am not going to answer a yes or no to that because it is a qualified limitation. Our curricular speech is indeed limited to the approved curriculum, but we do have the right to incidental speech. So we can respond to questions that students are asking. We can guide discussion or allow discussion in the classroom, so that's between students. And we have the right to speech outside of the curriculum, like as we're passing in the hallway or like at bus line incident. So it is not an absolute limitation. And I can send you the AFT 8027 versus 80 ruling again if you need that. So there's a full discussion
I
of
think
it.
we're in agreement. It's not an absolute. It's not
It's not absolute, but it's also not a simple yes or no.
Further questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, thank you. We'll let you get to your next
Yep.
hearing.
And curriculum's locally adopted, as you remember.
Daniel Smith. Ben, could you pop open the windows a little bit? It's getting very warm in here. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Chairperson, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Daniel Smith. I'm a coach and educator out of Somersworth, New Hampshire, and today I'll be testifying against this bill. To do so, I will be sharing with you a poem authored by a gentleman named Mike, an educator out of Manchester, New Hampshire. And while these words are not my own, I humbly stand beside them. Why I hang a pride flag in my classroom. Ugh, why do you have that hanging up there? I look at these two boys sneering at something on my classroom wall, so I look up to find the offensive decor. My eyes scan through all my posters, all gothic and nerdy glory, before they fall on the pride flag, menacing in all its rainbow splendor. And I carve up the angry retort in my throat into a school-appropriate question. Oh, that? What's the matter with it? The two students just roll their eyes and grumble something like, I'm tired of seeing that everywhere. They quickly switch to poking fun at each other, trading accusations of gayness, laughing as they admit that their mothers would put them in the ground if they found that flag in their rooms. I wonder how many other parents have buried their children in early graves, ashamed of how they strayed from the straight and narrow, their coffins painted a stark and inoffensive white. Months later, another boy starts skipping my class shortly after we start a new book. I catch him about a week later and ask him what's going on. He says that he doesn't want to read any more of that gay stuff, referring to one of the characters sneaking off on a date with her secret girlfriend. I don't have a problem with people like that. I'm just tired of seeing it everywhere. I think of the difference between discomfort and erasure. How even the mention of gender makes some clap their hands over eyes and ears so they might deny the humanity before them. I became a teacher so I might build bridges with these kids, help them discover their voice and their stories living in their fingertips. To watch as they begin to blossom into new gardens I just might see someday. But there are those that want to hold us to curriculum dressed like Leviticus, their hate a coliseum of lions' mouths, their God hungry for these heathens, queer children nailed to crosses like Christ's, bleeding out the sin of being different. I look at the empty seats in my classroom, and I can't help wondering how many of them are occupied by ghosts. These kids told that they must cross-stitch their hearts like Frankenstein's monster, must confine themselves in coffins of flesh that taste like rotting earth. That flag is more than mere fabric. It is a table for us to break bread and shatter stigmas. A garden to nurture understanding out of discomfort. A welcome banner to this small sanctuary where everyone is equal, everyone is empowered, where they can finally feel at home. Thank you. I yield my time.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Amanda Azad? Okay.
Bill's going with me, so you got different.
It's down to you and me, I guess. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Amanda Azad. I'm the policy director at the ACLU of New Hampshire. We are here asking you to consider how extreme HB 1132 is. It is both vague and incredibly broad. It bans all flags and banners in schools with very limited exceptions. So US flags, state, city, town flags of New Hampshire, POW and military flags. And then the school's own flags, such as their own sports team, but no other sports teams. So if the Patriots win next time, no celebrating. Going even further, it allows for flags as part of a lesson, but only for a few classes: foreign language, world geography, math, language arts, and United States history classes, with penalties ranging from professional disciplinary action to a $1,000 fine. So first, a few questions, because the language of the bill is unclear, and I think that should be the issue that you all try to navigate and discuss. It's removing any messaging in the form of paper on a wall. Is that what a banner is? What exactly is a banner? Or messaging that exists on a fabric hanging from something? What is a flag? There are no definitions. Or is this banning a rainbow pride sticker on a door or a poster on a wall? Is that a flag situation or not? All rainbows related to the LGBTQ community? These uncertainties are a big problem since there are also significant penalties attached to any misunderstandings. Also, why is there an exception for math classrooms but not science classrooms? Why US history, but every other history class cannot have flags or banners? Under the language of the bill, you may not have a happy birthday banner. Quite literally, you cannot have Irish flags for St. Paddy's Day. Any seasonal holiday flags, no professional sports teams, and I think notably something we can all agree on, there's no university or college flags, so no UNH or Dartmouth, no graduation flags for a class of 2026, and the list goes on. For example, a display of different college flags, as I mentioned, for seniors, either encouraging them to attend or showing which schools people have already gotten accepted into. This is a very common sight in high school hallways this time of the year. So that is illegal under this bill. So what about autism awareness flags in special education classrooms? What about bullying prevention month banners in school counselors' offices? What about a pink breast cancer flag on a teacher's desk in a pencil cup? Banning all flags and banners just removes two entire platforms of communication and celebration and representation. It's like saying no posters allowed in school. Are we trying to get to a sterile, all-white room with just US and military flags? That feels deeply problematic. The US Constitution guarantees robust free speech and expression rights, and flag bans tread all over those. And yes, these protections do extend to teachers and students, and those rights of freedom of speech and expression do not stop inside a school. We cannot sanitize schools so that children are just going to empty walled classrooms with only government and military flags. Frankly, that sounds dystopian and kind of authoritarian. With only a handful of classes receiving exceptions for academic lessons, I do want to flag this bill would negatively impact the education of all students with censorship, along with limiting student artwork and club activities. Could the school display student artwork with any flags? Flags related to the identity of the student, nationality, ancestry, or pride flags. Student clubs may not be permitted to display flags at club meetings or in school displays. Any banners? I have a lot of questions about banners. I don't know how schools or teachers would interpret the language of this bill. You could probably ask 5 different people here what this is or isn't allowed and get 5 different responses. Truly, what is a banner? The attempts to control students and censor classrooms needs to stop. A sweeping flag and banner ban like this is just too extreme. It's excessive and repressive for New Hampshire. So asking, please, ITL. Thanks for your time.
Excuse me. Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Odd, for taking my question. You mentioned in your testimony awareness weeks and months that are brought into high schools, and I'm going to give you a scenario. I used to work at a crisis center, and as part of a statewide initiative, the crisis centers would collaborate with the local high schools to raise awareness about teen dating violence, and would have a table in the cafeteria or in a main hallway where a lot of people passed with a banner that was teen dating awareness week, right? And so that kind of banner, that are you suggesting that like autism awareness, suicide prevention, breast cancer awareness, those kind of awareness building and community building opportunities would go away?
Yes, they would. And there are a lot of, as you said, there are many, and a lot of times they are focused on youth. So there are mental health awareness, there are suicide prevention. Right now at my child's daycare, it's child abuse prevention, and there's all sorts of signs and different displays about that to bring awareness. So I realize that the folks on this committee may not agree with me on a lot of things related to this bill or things that are implemented in here, but the bill itself is incredibly vague. It's incredibly broad. It is really exceptionally extreme in what that it would cover. And I don't think anyone really wants to see what schools would look like after this would be passed.
Further question?
No, all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you for your testimony. Beth Scar? Sorry, Beth, I don't remember how to pronounce your last name.
I'm Beth Scare from Nashua, and I messaged Lisa Freeman, and she did not know her bill was being heard today, and that's why she's not here. And I can't take the ACLU seriously anymore. They didn't make a peep about my flag case in Nashua.
Mr. Chair, we're not disparaging other people who have testified.
Okay,
Thank you.
You keep your testimony to.
Let's keep the testimony to the bill. Thank you.
thank you. I'm in here in support of HB 1132, which would effectively ban pride and trans flags from New Hampshire schools. In 2020, Nashua High School North Principal Nathan Burns approved the hanging of a 6-foot-long Pride Progress flag in a prominent place in the lobby of Nashua High School North, where it hangs to this day. It includes pink and white triangles, blue and white triangles representing transgenderism. It teaches the lie to all those kids that girls can be boys and boys can be girls, which leads to taking health-damaging hormones and having healthy body parts removed. In 2023, under that same Pride Progress flag in Nashua High North, there was a display of many small flags representing many sexual and gender identities. There were flags for gay, bisexual, pansexual, omnisexual, polyamorous, non-binary, transgender, lesbian, aromantic, sapphic, demisexual, Achillean, xenogender, gender fluid agender, asexual, demi-romantic, and aroace. Nashua High North AP psychology teacher Paul Menard orchestrated the display of these flags. In an email to the principal, he said, "We would sell for $1 a card that says, 'I'm proud to be blank,' and people would write what they identify as. And we'll hang it on the wall outside the cafeteria near the pride flag." Mr. Menard was prompting kids to identify as polyamorous, meaning having multiple sexual partners. Xenogender, which includes identifying as an animal or an inanimate object, and gender fluid, which means changing gender identities from one day to the next. It's perverse, inane stuff, and it proves that we are well down a slippery slope. In Dr. H.O. Smith's school, a school for first graders in Hudson, there's an 8-foot-long pride flag. It's so big that it hangs down 2 stories in a stairwell that children use to get to class, but where parents would be unlikely to see it. Why is there such a big pride flag in a school for first graders that should know nothing about sexual orientation? I have seen many other pride and trans flags in schools. I don't believe they should be there, especially since the same people who hang these flags would never hang a Christian flag or any flag representing traditional religious values. It's all one-sided. Why is that? Is it because they are trying to separate kids from their parents' traditional values? That is not what schools should be about. Please vote ought to pass on HB 1132 to ban pride and trans flags from schools and help restore them to be a safe place for families to send their children. And I passed, you should have gotten pictures of the flags. I have the display at Nashua High North with the big flag at the top and all the little flags underneath representing the bizarre stuff. And then there's the humongous pride flag at Dr. H.O. Smith School in Hudson. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? All right, seeing
Thank
none,
you.
thank you. Julie Smith? Ben, is there another sheet? Good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this bill. And while I was listening to other speakers, I was taking some notes. And you just heard from a fellow Nashua resident. I lived in that city for many years, and it's an embattled city and embattled by litigation over free speech. And even though the city charter says that the school is quote unquote styled separately, we know it's really not. City Hall has used viewpoint discrimination on flags. So when I hear people who have spoken before me talk about being censored, the ACLU speaker had said a few things about that. You know, nowhere in the bill does it say gay. And if you remember Governor DeSantis from a few years ago, when people said, don't say gay, it's not about gay. It's kind of like you can't play nice in the sandbox, there'll be no flags at all. Even though another speaker has said that, oh, it's sterile and white in the school. The kids are there to learn how to read and write and do math and use logic. They're not there for indoctrination. I say that as a taxpayer. And Ted Cruz had said Section 30 with social media, either you're a platform or a publisher. So which is it with the flag? Is the flag a platform or a publisher? That's the question I ask anyone that has a problem with this bill. I think we need to get back to basics. I support the bill, and I think that's pretty much all I have to say. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Thank you. All right, seeing none. Amy, sorry, I'm not even gonna try the last name. Sorry. Teravacia? That was close? All right. Good morning and welcome. Turn your mic on, please. Thank you.
Yep, for the record, my name is Amy Terravecchia. I am with 603 Equality. I am here to testify in opposition to HB 1132. The bill's sponsor, when this was back in the House, had said numerous times that the purpose of this piece of legislation was to create an environment of neutrality in the classrooms. And I would argue that this bill does the exact opposite. It ensures that only one perspective, one viewpoint, can be allowed to exist within an educational setting. One of the most beautiful things about our country is the ability to engage with diverse ideas, opinions, and people in thoughtful and critical ways. The classroom setting is where we test these skills before entering the real world. By censoring what flags and banners can be displayed within a classroom setting, you are strong-arming educators, students, and school administrators to prescribe to a specific and strict worldview. You have heard time and time again that America is a melting pot. The great promise of our country was that the United States could be home to anyone who believed in our freedoms, our rights, and was willing to partake in the great experiment of democracy. Freedom of expression, freedom of critical thought, and freedom of speech are all central to the tenets of the founding of our country. I can think of numerous instances where flags have been displayed in classrooms outside of a lesson plan, but have still benefited students. Flags can signal pride in your heritage, your lived experiences, or your clubs or community affiliations. Flags can signal celebration for birthdays, achievements, graduations, and more. And flags can raise awareness about medical research, fundraisers, and community needs. It is no surprise that at a time when New Hampshire's legislation is also entertaining extreme censorship bills in the classroom, the flags are also coming under attack. The purpose of our public education system is not to create a compliant citizenry. It is to cultivate and educate individuals who can contribute thoughtfully and thoroughly to society. For this reason, I urge you to recommend ITL on HB 1132.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Scott Files. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having us today and hearing our testimonies. My name is Scott Files. I'm from Somersworth, New Hampshire. And I'm here remembering the one teacher in my high school that displayed a pride flag. I graduated from high school in 2012, and I never needed to approach this teacher for assistance or comfort or support, but I know that that teacher was a widely known resource for any student in my school who needed anything. The pride flag that they displayed was simply a message that their door was open for a student who needed assistance, that they were a safe space, and wasn't a politically motivated expression. Just I'm a supporter of this community, and anyone who needs anything can come to me for help. So preventing a teacher from being able to have a nonverbal representation of their openness to be there for their students, I think would be very harmful for all students. And I think that's all I've got.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Thank you. Seeing none, thank you. That's all I have on the sheet. Anybody else who wants to testify on House Bill 1132? Brian, did you want? Okay, sorry, I didn't see you on here.
I may have forgotten to check the speaking box, Mr. Chairman. I think I was on the second sheet. But thank you for allowing me to testify. I'll be brief because I know you have a lot of bills to get to today. For the record, Brian Hawkins representing NEA New Hampshire. I'll make just a few short points. First, I think it was important when the legislature required that there was the official display of the American flag, the New Hampshire state flag, but this approach of prohibiting with these limited exceptions, I think, is the wrong approach. First, let me say, it was brought up earlier, the exception in letter A around which classes these can be displayed in. I mean, I'm sure many of us have budding artists in our families and in schools, and if they were to, and we want to see those that art displayed, when it comes time for that, and we'd be concerned that when you start selecting classes like this, you might interfere with a student's ability to express themselves as well. The last point I'll make is, and I think Ms. Howes raised this, is in Roman 2 through the end of the bill, really, it gets into what I assume is disciplinary action required of, I assume, personnel, and that really gets into the granular level of disciplinary procedures and agreements that are arrived at the local level. And so we're concerned that this brings both the state board into that and prescribes what is done when there is a violation found. So with that, I'll close my testimony and happy to try and take any questions if you have them.
Any questions? Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. So the issue of what kind of flag, what's a flag? Is it made of fabric? Is it made of vinyl? Is it made of paper? Does this mean flags in pen cups? So a teacher, this in one of the schools in my hometown, we have a teacher who went through a couple of teachers, but one most recently had a very, very difficult battle with breast cancer, very difficult. And the school community really, really rallied around her treatment and recovery. And would this bill mean that the teachers who put breast cancer awareness flags in their pen cups, in their classrooms, on their desks, as a reminder that we are all supporting this one particular teacher, does that go away?
I think under this bill, it certainly could. I mean, it doesn't get into detail about what displaying a flag or a banner means, and so what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And I think, for you, the legislature, as a policy matter, I can anticipate every year a bill coming in were this to become law, asking for a certain a flag that represents something to be added to the exemption list of this, and I think that's the slippery slope and the whack-a-mole that you end up with in passing a bill like this.
May I follow up?
Follow, sure.
So in one of the high schools in my district, one of the students had a tragic accident while in a school program, and ended up in the hospital for, I think, 8 months, and is now with traumatic brain injuries and internal organ injuries. And we actually heard legislation about him in another committee this year. But the community, again, rallied around this student and put banners up all over the school, raising money for the family to help with the family's expenses, and providing meal trains, and just raising awareness that this student was still a part of this school community, and let's remember and keep folding him into the school community. Those banners, do they go away under this?
I think so. I think that's why one of the reasons we should not pass this legislation.
Last question.
Follow, yep.
Yeah, thank you. So a teacher or an administrator or the front desk clerk at a school who whose child or themselves are a member of the LGBTQ community, under this, can they not have a little flag in their pen cup either?
That's actually an example I was thinking of as I was in the audience, the concern that, someone would not be able to have a personal display such as that, because we do know, as you said, we do know teachers have been going through cancer and other illnesses, and I would hate to prohibit that, their ability to do that.
Thank you.
So Brian, I've kind of been listening to all the testimony.
Yeah.
I know Senator Gannon was talking about content-based discrimination earlier. We had earlier testimony about hate speech, is prohibited. I guess I need a little bit of clarification if you're able to, on how do we approach that now? Who determines what's hate speech and what's appropriate and inappropriate in the current setting?
Yeah, I think it's a variety of ways. I guess I don't have a short answer for that, though I'd be happy to follow up with some of them. I mean, there are some issues that are prescribed in laws discriminatory, for example, so that's one area. And then there are some calls that are, just left at the local level as to whether something is, it may not be a hate speech situation. It may be just, a student who's, inciting a dangerous occurrence at school. So may not be getting to yours. Specifically what you're asking about, I guess I would say it's a variety of ways in which we determine that sort of thing.
Okay. I mean, we've had good discussion today about, especially LGBTQ pride flags, Christian flags were mentioned, and I just was curious how the schools were handling this currently.
Yeah, the schools certainly will follow the law, but I think one of the issues I know when you do have very broad language out there that is left up to subjective interpretation, that's really, I think, problematic when you can, when it really gets down to an individual's viewpoint. That's, I think, where we run into trouble in making sure that we're passing laws that are evenly enforced, and not just left up to the interpreter.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? All right. I'm going to close the hearing. Oh, did we have I'm sorry. I didn't see you. Come on up.
Hi, thank you for allowing me. I'll be quick. My name is Louise Spencer. I'm speaking today on behalf of myself and also the Kent Street Coalition, which is an all-volunteer grassroots advocacy organization, and we oppose this bill. In listening to testimony today, I learned that some interpret this bill as specifically trying to ban pride flags, and to the extent that this bill is left open to enforcement through complaint, it really raises concerns that it will not, this ban, however it is, will not be universally enforced, and that will constitute discrimination by the school. And it just opens the door to numerous lawsuits of all kinds. I will also speak as a taxpayer. The idea that we would be spending valuable school dollars on these sorts of lawsuits is very disturbing to me. It's also, in fact, disturbing that the legislature continues to spend so much time on bills like this when we have very real issues confronting Granite Staters. This time could be so much better spent addressing issues, the real issues that our schools are facing. So for these reasons, I oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none, Louise, I'm just going to ask that you sign on for our official record.
Sure.
And with that, I'm going to close the hearing on House Bill 1132.